By taking that segment of language and hearing it in a different voice, you become aware that it's nothing more than a string of words, and thus it loses its impact. This may remind you of a rhyme we learned as children: sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. Unfortunately, as children, we couldn't put this into practice all that well because no one ever taught us diffusion skills. A client of mine, we'll call her Yana, who suffered from depression, found this method extremely helpful. She had grown up with a verbally abusive mother who had constantly criticized and insulted her. The insults that had once come from her mother had now turned into recurrent negative thoughts. You're fat, you're ugly, you're stupid, you'll never amount to anything, nobody likes you. When these thoughts came to mind during our sessions, Yana would often start crying. She had spent many years and thousands of dollars in therapy trying to get rid of these thoughts, all to no avail. Yana was an avid fan of the comedy troupe Monty Python and the character she picked from the film The Life of Brian. In the film, Brian's mother, played by the male actor Terry Jones, is always criticizing Brian in a ridiculously high-pitched, screeching voice. When Yana heard her negative thoughts in the voice of Brian's mother, she couldn't take them seriously. The thoughts did not immediately disappear, but they quickly lost power over her, and this contributed significantly to lifting her depression. But what if a thought is both true and serious? For instance, if you're dying from cancer and have the thought, I'll be dead soon, from an ACT/ACT perspective, we are far more interested in whether a thought is helpful than whether it's true or false, serious or ridiculous, negative or positive, optimistic or pessimistic. The bottom line is always the same. Does this thought help you make the most out of your life? Now, if you only have a few months to live, it's really important to reflect on how you want to spend it. What loose ends do you need to tie up? What do you want to do? And who do you want to see before you die? So a thought like, I'll be dead soon, could be helpful if it motivates you to reflect and take effective action. If that's the case, you wouldn't try to diffuse such a thought. You would pay attention to it and use it to help you do what you need to do. But suppose that thought becomes an obsession and you keep playing it over and over in your head. Would it be helpful to spend your last weeks of life thinking all day long, I'll be dead soon, giving all your attention to that thought instead of to the loved ones around you? Now, for some people, the silly voices technique may seem inappropriate for a thought like this, because it might seem to be trivializing something quite serious. If that's how it feels to you, don't use it. But it's important to note that diffusion is not about trivializing or making fun of genuine problems in your life. Diffusion is aimed at freeing ourselves from the oppression of our thoughts, freeing up our time, energy, and attention so we can invest them in meaningful activities rather than dwelling uselessly on our thoughts. So if the thought, I'll be dead soon, keeps showing up and taking up all your attention, thus preventing you from connecting with your loved ones, then you could diffuse it in a number of different ways. You could acknowledge, aha, here's the imminent death story, or I'm having the thought that I'll be dead soon. Or you could simply say, thanks, mind. And don't think you're going to have to spend the rest of your life thanking your mind or hearing your thoughts in ditties or silly voices. These methods are merely stepping stones. Down the line, you can expect to diffuse your thought instantly without the need for such contrived techniques. Although there will be times when it's useful to pull them out of your psychological toolkit. When practicing diffusion, it's important to keep the following things in mind. The aim of diffusion is not to get rid of unpleasant thoughts, but rather to see them for what they are, just words. And to let go of struggling with them. At times they will go away quickly, and at other times they won't. If you start expecting them to go, you are setting yourself up for disappointment and frustration. Don't expect these techniques to make you feel good. Often when you diffuse a troublesome thought, you will feel better. But this is just a beneficial byproduct, not the main goal. The main goal of diffusion is to disentangle you from unhelpful thought processes so you can focus your attention on more important things. So when diffusion does make you feel better, by all means enjoy it, but don't expect it to. And don't start using it to try to control how you feel. Otherwise, you're stuck right back in the happiness trap. Remember that you're human, so there will be plenty of times when you forget to use these skills, and that's okay, because at the moment you realize that you've been reeled in an unhelpful thoughts. You can instantly use one of these techniques to unhook yourself. Remember that no technique is foolproof. There may be times when you try them and diffusion doesn't happen. If so, simply observe what it's like to be fused with your own thoughts. Merely learning to tell the difference between fusion and diffusion is useful in its own right. Diffusion is like any other skill. The more you practice, the better you get. So add the thanking your mind and silly voices technique to your repertoire and aim to use them between 5 and 10 times each day. At this point, don't expect any dramatic changes in your life. Simply notice what happens as you incorporate these practices into your daily routine. And if you're having any doubts or concerns, make a note of them. In the next chapter, we'll look at common problems people have with diffusion, and more importantly, we'll learn how to overcome them. Troubleshooting diffusion. Diffusion doesn't work, snapped John. What do you mean? I asked. Well, he said, I had to give this presentation at work in front of about 50 people. My mind kept telling me I was going to screw up and make a fool of myself. So I tried those diffusion techniques, but they did nothing. You mean you kept buying into the story that you screw up? No, it helped with that. I stopped taking it seriously. Then why do you say diffusion doesn't work? Because I still felt anxious. John, I said, I've been giving talks in public for over 20 years, and I still feel anxious every time I get up there. I've met hundreds of people who speak to audiences as part of their profession, and I've always asked them, do you get anxious when you give a talk? So far, almost every single person has said yes. The point is, if you're going to put yourself in any sort of challenging situation, if you're going to take any significant risk, then anxiety is a normal emotion. It will be there, and diffusing negative thoughts is not going to get rid of it. Many of us, when we first encounter diffusion, fall into the same trap as John. We start trying to use diffusion as a control strategy, as a way of trying to make our experience different than it is. Remember, a control strategy is any attempt to change, avoid, or get rid of unwanted thoughts and feelings. Control strategies become problematic when they are used excessively and inappropriately, or in situations where they can't work, or when using them reduces the quality of your life in the long term. Diffusion is the very opposite of a control strategy. It's an acceptance strategy. In ACT/ACT, rather than attempting to change, avoid, or get rid of unpleasant thoughts and feelings, our aim is to accept them. Acceptance doesn't mean you have to like your uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. It just means you stop struggling with them. When you stop wasting your energy on trying to change, avoid, or get rid of them, you can put that energy into something more useful instead. This is best explained with an analogy. Imagine you live in a small country that shares a border with a hostile neighbor. There is long-standing tension between the two countries. The neighboring country has a different religion and a different political system, and your country sees it as a major threat. There are three possible scenarios for how your country can relate to its neighbor. The worst case scenario is war. Your country attacks and the other one retaliates, or vice versa. As both countries get pulled into major war, the people of both nations suffer. Think of any major war and the huge costs involved in terms of life, money, and well-being.